Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Future Health Symposium, part of the NUS ISS Learning Festival. As mentioned, my name is Adam, and I'm going to be talking about digital transformation in integrated care. So what is this session about? Basically, we all heard digital transformation is upon us, especially in the sector of health and healthcare. What we really want to do is to ensure that we have effective, sustainable digital transformation to support a sustainable integrated care model that adopts a person-centered care approach. Now, this is very important to strengthen the ecosystem for a healthier SG. This will be relevant for the audience who are coming from Singapore, a national initiative that's going to drive the nation's direction in terms of health policy. And of course, addressing the quadruple aim of improving population health, reducing cost of care, enhancing patients' experience, while of course improving providers' satisfaction. So with that, let me start by covering some key concepts so that we're all on the same page. First thing first, I need to talk about what digital transformation is, because these concepts sometimes elude participants during conversation. We all have different definitions, so we need to get onto the same page. When we talk about digital transformation, two very common synonyms, if you will, comes up. The first is digitization. The second will be digitalization. So digitization is defined as the process of changing from an analog to a digital form. So you can think of it as simply using from paper to a computer or a tablet. As simple as that, analog to a digital form. Whereas digitalization is defined as the use of digital technology to change a business model and provide new revenue and value producing opportunities. The last phrase is the key, value producing opportunities. It is described as the process of moving to a digital business. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, these two terms comes up sometimes as synonyms, but in reality, they mean very different things. So digitization, moving from analog to digital form, it's really the tools that you would use in your digital transformation journey. That's it. So from paper to electronic device, be it a computer, a laptop, a tablet, it's just tools. Whereas digitalization, because it is an attempt or a process to change a business model, ideally generate new revenue for commercial entities and value producing opportunities. This will really be an organization's strategy and operations. Of course, this is a very high level definition. Now, it is important to note that while there is no digitalization without digitization, so you cannot actually go on and implement your strategy and optimize your operations without using tools. These two terms are not the same. Okay, they mean very different things. So this is the first main point I need to make. Digitization and digitalization, they are not the same. So what does digitalization really entails, especially in a healthcare setting? Some people would say, hey, Adam, how about a digital hospital? What does that mean? How about a paperless hospital then? So we have various initiatives and frameworks where we try to implement paperless hospital, paper light hospital, etc. Does that really translate to digitalization? Or is it a hospital with the latest equipment, Will? Or any of the array of buzzword that you'll find in many conferences or sales talk or exhibition booth? Now, these, in my opinion, are largely marketing buzzword. And when I hear people talking about them during conversations that entails digital transformation or digitization, I will refer them to actually the basket of digital distraction. So it's important to actually understand what digitalization really means and not get caught up on the hype of latest marketing buzzwords. So let's go further. and we talk about digital transformation. So earlier on, we explored the difference between digitization and digitalization, and I want to put things in a context. So I have here an example, a traditional thermometer. This is an analog thermometer, if you will. No electronic devices involved. Very basic scientific principles. There's mercury in the glass tube, and it reacts to temperature. And with the reaction, it actually expands or shrinks, therefore measuring the temperature of the patient when it is used. So if we want to digitize the thermometer, and you see this very frequently, particularly in COVID times, it will be a digital thermometer. Nothing complicated and easily available off the shelf or online shopping. You can buy it. In terms of actual usage, not much difference as well in terms of operating a workflow. When you want to measure a patient's temperature, very fast, very straightforward. Not much diff. So it's really a process of moving from analog to a digital form, a digital thermometer. But if you were to look at it from a digitalization perspective, I'll have to give another example to give you the train of thought. So I have here a baby. Think of the baby as the patient. It could be an elderly folk, anyone who's actually serving in the role of the patient. Now, patients obviously need to rest, especially in a hospital setting where they are inpatient setting. And when a patient is warded, many times the nursing care support, the nurses, they have to take vital signs, including temperature. So this is where this example comes in. Um, so in a traditional setting, you may have a situation where the nurse have to periodically uh, disturb the patient, if you will, especially when the patient is sleeping, to take the temperature. This poses some inconveniences, if you will. Firstly, the nursing staff have to keep track of time. You have to actually take the temperature at a regular interval. So for certain patients type, of course, let's say dengue fever, right? And this means that there will be some disturbance in terms of work, because you have to put whatever is the nurse is working on hand and then go on to take the temperature. So there's the disruption of work, if you will. From the patient perspective, if the patient is sleeping, you actually have to wake the patient up, even if it's non-deliberate, because you have to take the temperature, right? You have to actually take effective temperature, stuck the thermometer somewhere on the patient. Not very nice gesture, if you will. So if I were to go on to digitalization, I can use technology. So you will notice on the example on screen for the baby, there is a patch. And this patch will be gathering the temperature on a continuous basis and transmitting to whatever device you want, be it using Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, it doesn't matter. This is all tech that's transparent to the health provider. And what does this translate to? If you have a huge amount of data, in this case, temperature, you can actually build some analytics and you can do predictive analytics. Actually know when the temperature is going to spike up because you have baseline data. And because you're using tech again, you can inform the relevant nursing care staff or clinical staff, depending on what sort of use case you have, to come and take a look at the patient when there's a need. So you can think of effective workflow optimization when you truly utilize technology on the digitalization aspect. You optimize the workflow. The nursing staff, they'll have more time to do what is useful for the patient. They don't get disturbed or maintain routine stuff, and then the patients don't really get disturbed. And if you translate this setting in the COVID times, where you have isolated patients in certain wards, this will be very useful as well, right? So this is digitalization. But what we really want to achieve is digital transformation. And this is where I go back to the digitalization example. A nurse have to take many vital signs, right? It could be oxygen intake, it could be your blood pressure. So if you were to optimize a single aspect of a nurse role, that is useful, but there's only half the bridge built. The nurse still have to perform other tasks manually. So when we do look at digital transformation, we want to transform things from a system level. We want to actually create and modify existing clinical processes. We want to optimize resources, culture, patient experience, so that you do not have things done halfway. The true transformation, where entails a lot more than a single aspect optimization. So if you look back at digitization and digitalization, this is really optimizing processes. And we move further to the right when we talk about digitalization to digital transformation. We're trying to optimize the human experience aspects of things as well as systems interaction. With that, I'd like to give another example to further cement this concept. So most of us will be familiar with the diagram that's presented on the screen. It is used to illustrate equality, right? So if I were to describe it, it'll be three kids of various age and sizes trying to watch baseball. And there's some barriers, which is in this case a fence. So it's obstructing them from watching baseball. So what do? You give them some tools. In this case, it's wooden crates. A lot of times when we do digitization, when we optimize processes, this is exactly what we do. In a hospital setting, in a healthcare setting, we give everyone equal amount of tools. This is fair. You get the same network upgrades, computers, application systems, etc., etc., without taking things into context. So everybody gets the fair amount of resources, one size fits all, because you don't really touch with the human aspects of things yet. This is optimizing things from a process, a function-centered optimization. This is where a lot of times when we deploy tools without looking into context, this digitization. Moving a little bit forward, when you look at things in context and say, hey, actually different stakeholder, different clinical departments have different needs. So we actually have to allocate things according to their needs and tune things a little bit, optimizing certain applications, new functions, features that's relevant for that clinical setting. So again, the same example, it's just a reallocation of resources. Don't necessarily have to be a huge additional investment. It's just reallocation. So this is great in a sense because whatever expenditure you have, resources output, remains somewhat the same. But the recipient, the stakeholders, they get things optimized, they get optimization in context. And this is where a lot of times this will be workflow centric. So there's a difference between process and workflow. This is something that I like to highlight here is that a lot of times when we do digital transformation, a lot of technical folks will think that process and workflow is the same. That's because they come from a technical perspective. In a healthcare perspective, processes and clinical workflow are two different items. And as mentioned here, because one is really function centered and one is really human centered. So this is where your digitalization comes in, but very piecemeal. All right. What we want to do is digital transformation. So again, same problem, but we remove the root cause, right? We go to the root cause, we remove it as opposed to trying to solve symptoms. This will be digital transformation. And this is exactly what we try to do. So this is a systems level optimization. Having said that, all stages of this, regardless whether you are doing digitization, digitalization, or you're going full-fledged digital transformation, they're all important aspects of the journey. It really, the relevancy goes back to what stage your healthcare organization is at and what stage it is ready for. You can't really do a digital transformation overnight or over 1 year. It's going to be very tough because you have to optimize policy, do change management, etc., etc. So with this is the concept regarding digitization, digitalization, and digital transformation. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about integrated care. So what is integrated care? The definition is that integrated care is care that is planned with people who work together to understand the service users, so the recipient of care, and their carers. Ideally, we put them in control, and then we coordinate and deliver services to achieve the best outcome. Okay, notice the words that I've underlined. Putting the recipient of care and the carers in control, there's some sort of coordination to navigate across the care system, and then of course delivering the care itself. This is really about patient-centered care, which we'll talk a little bit about later. So for integrated care, there's many models and many associated concepts. One of the more important ones is continuum of care. So what is the continuum of care? It is a concept involving an integrated systems of care. So it's an integrated care model that guides and tracks patients over time through a comprehensive array of health services across all levels of healthcare. So regardless whether you're looking at preventive health, primary care, acute care, all the way down to palliative, there will be a system in place, a continuum of care system in place to guide you through. And very importantly, we talk about putting recipients of care in control. We coordinate using continuum of care and then deliver the services to them over time. So this is from cradle to grave. Some sort of well orchestrated coordination to make sure you receive optimum care relevant to you at whatever stage of life you're at. The next concept I need to expound on will be population health. Now, the population-based approach to integrated healthcare delivery, it is a scoping review of clinical care and public health coordination. So if you put it back to the diagram earlier on, when we talk about a healthcare system, no longer are we restricted to acute care setting or reactive care. We want to do preventive care upfront. So population health rests on four very important pillars. Definitely chronic care management, your quality and safety, which we'll explore a little bit more later, public health, and of course, health policy. Now, with that, we talk about quality of care, safety, optimal services to the recipient of care. What we really want to do is to achieve something what we call the Quadruple Aim. So what is the Quadruple Aim? To articulate that, I have to introduce to you the Institute of Health Improvement's Triple Aim framework, which is something that is very important to us working on integrated care or population health approach. Basically, this is an approach to optimize health systems performance. What we want to do for the Triple Aim approach is that we want to improve patient experience of care, which include quality and satisfaction. So it's not just enough that they receive good care. They must also receive, respect. They must also receive the mental aspects of things, the social aspects of health. They must be happy when they actually receive the health services. We also want to improve the health population because we want to move away from reactive care. We don't want to wait for people to get sick. Then we start administrating care. We want to take care of people and keep them healthy before they fall sick. And of course, reducing the cost of care because ultimately someone has to pay for all this and it is not cheap. At this point, you might ask me, Adam, this is just 3 points. This is the triple aim. What about the fourth aim, the quadruple aim? So there's an evolution of the triple aim model. We add on another aspect, which is improving the provider's experience. Because end of the day, we have to take care of healthcare providers as well. We have to take care of the clinicians, the nurses, the paramedical professionals, etc. So I like to tell people, please take care of me as well. I'm also human. Please take care of healthcare professionals. So this is the quadruple aim that we'd like to achieve when we roll out the integrated care setting, the continuum of care, population health. At this point, I'd drop back to the healthier SG concept, which I mentioned when I started this session. So the Healthier SG is a Singapore initiative. Going forward, this is the country's policy where we try to realign healthcare services for the population. So what is it? It's actually a major reform of the Singapore healthcare system, and it's a population health approach where, as the name implies, Healthier SG, we want to move people from sick care to actual care. So we want to prevent the population, citizens in general, from falling sick. So this will includes preventive health, public health initiatives, working with sports, nutrients, exercise, mental health, etc. So do check out the relevant information within the Ministry of Health website. So with that, I need to move on to the next concept that's equally important when we talk about integrated care, which will be the patient-centered care approach. which is very important as part of the integrated care model. So, what is patient centered care? If I were to use the definition provided by the Institute of Medicine, IOM, it defines patient centered care as providing care that is respectful, responsive to individual patient preferences, needs, values, and ensuring that the patient's value guides all clinical decision. So it's not just cultural preferences, it could be religious or faith based preferences as well. So when we administer care, we take all this into consideration while providing the best of care and try to deliver the best outcome. So this is patient centered care. Now, I've come across situations where there's discussion on patient centered care, and it says that, patient centered care, let's just give the patient whatever they wish or they want. That is not patient centered care, okay? That's just being irresponsible, if not medically unethical, okay? So it is not that. So let me expound further what patient centered care is. So some characteristics of patient-centered care, it's as I mentioned, respecting patients' individual preferences, diversity, including the right to comment, ask questions, make complaints regarding the care that they receive. So it's not a one-way transmission where the clinician or the nurse staff say you have to do this X Y Z. Don't ask so much questions. Go and do it. No, we're moving away from such model. So must be some interaction. So patients or their family can actually raise concerns, queries, and clarify doubts. This will actually help them participate in their own care journey. So other characteristics of patient-centered care also includes recognizing their needs, respects their right, and to make health decisions, choices when planning care and treatment. So this might sound weird, but you must understand that at different stages of a person's life, they have different priorities. So if, let's say you have an elderly patient who's towards the end of life, some clinical decisions may be medically correct, but may actually have preferences that say it doesn't really matter to them anymore. They don't want to die at a hospital, for example. They want to die at home. That's a wish the patient has expressed. So this is something that we will actually take into consideration if it's possible. So this is what patient-centered care is about: taking the patient's needs, wishes into consideration, letting them have a say in the care that they receive. In other words, patient-centered care is about treating a person receiving care with dignity, and involving them in relevant decisions. And of course, if you're moving towards preventive medicine, we can call it a person-centered care because they're not patients yet; they're healthy individuals. Of course, the topic of patient-centered care is very big. This is a huge lecture by itself, so I'm going to really just condense it into the core essentials. When we talk about patient-centered care, there's always 8 dimensions that's mentioned. Some people call it the 8 pillars of patient-centered care. This would be patient preferences, which we have talked about, emotional support, physical comfort, so your mental and physical aspects, information and education. So some minor mistakes that healthcare professionals make all the time is assuming that patients and their family have basic knowledge on what is going on. So you go into conversation assuming that they understand what you're talking about. That's not necessarily true all the time, even though the population these days are much more knowledgeable when it comes to certain aspects of clinical care. They do get lost in the conversation. So when we talk about patient-centered care, we have to provide them with information and education in a manner, in a language they can easily access and understand when convenience for them. There's also the access to care aspects of things. Oh, sorry, let me just go back. Access to care and the family and friends. Family and friends is something that a lot of healthcare professionals, when we develop policies and systems, we neglect. But they're actually the most important caregivers to the patient. So take this scenario. A lot of times when we discharge a patient, we will give them the care instructions. And we ask the patient, do you understand how to take a medication, dress your wounds, etc.? What we sometimes neglect is to understand that the patient, when they are discharged, they may be still under medication. They may be drowsy and unable to concentrate because they have just finished a medical procedure, for example. This is where you really have to, take their family and friends into consideration because they will be the one who's actually providing care when the patient goes home. There will be no nurse at the patient's home unless they're very rich to actually administer medication, provide certain instructions. So very important when we talk about patient-centered care to keep them in the loop and provide resources to them as well. There's also access to care. There's no point telling them, for example, a patient that they have to go for rehab services, and then they say, "So how do I go about doing it?" Sorry, it's not available. That's not very helpful. Okay. So when we talk about patient-centered care, wherever we refer or prescribe or suggest, it should be available to the patients as well, or else it defeats the purpose. So let me go back to the continuum of care that we talk about. As mentioned, it is a concept involving an integrated system of care that guides and tracks patient over time through a comprehensive array of health services across all levels of healthcare, be it preventive health, primary care, acute care, palliative. And we need to ensure that we put in the patient-centered care approach across the entire continuum of care, because this will then go on to, of course, other factors included, raise the quality of care, raise safety levels of care. And the only way we can do this is really using digital. It is crucial, of crucial importance, because we simply cannot survive or achieve such aims without involving technology. Such is the role digital transformation is. Now, let me go back to another concept I've raised earlier, the quadruple aim. So if you really break down the quadruple aim, again, this is also a very big topic, so I'm going to go a very high level approach. If you really break it down, it really talks about two broad categories. There are more, but there's two broad categories. One is optimizing efficiency. The other is motivating human behavior. So again, the process and the workflow aspects of things, the functional aspects and the human-centered aspects of things. Two different items, okay? Don't confuse them as the same thing. Um, to do this, again, we need digital transformation. Now, there are many pieces when we talk about digital transformation, many tools, frameworks, concepts that's useful. And I've listed a few of them because it's simply too many. We definitely need data, okay? Because healthcare is evidence-based. We can't go with gut feel. We're evidence-based. That's why we have clinical trials, we collect data, and we improve upon delivery of care. Healthcare is also very cultural. It's a social aspect. There's change management as well. And of course, process and human-centered aspects of things. So these are tools, these are strategies in general to help us apply digital transformation in a continual care setting to optimize efficiency and motivate human behavior. Now, here's the thing. I've put back this diagram. We want to ensure that the human-centered care approach is applied across the entire continuum of care. In other words, we want to optimize the continuum of care. And this is where the next section goes into optimizing the continuum of care. You notice that I have the example here to illustrate what it's like to optimize the continuum of care. It's really like herding cats. And what do I mean? Let me give you some examples. First thing first, we must take on the patient's perspective. Because many times when I talk to healthcare organization about digital transformation to optimize delivery of care for the patient, they will go into many great ideas to optimize it from the clinical perspective. Now, you must understand from a patient perspective, it's one healthcare journey. From a clinical healthcare organization perspective, when we talk to various departments, they will usually only be concerned of their department. So if the cardiology will be saying, I'm going to optimize wherever I can for cardiology and associated supporting services. Why? Because this is where their budget authority entails, where the authority to influence policy, hiring stops. That's it. And that's perfectly fine because that's what they are entasked to manage that department. But if you think of it, even simply in an acute care setting, and there's a cardiovascular patient, If their entire journey was so-so, and they had have a fantastic cardiology department, after that is so-so again. So long waiting time, not very friendly services, sure, the medication is out of stock, etc., etc. To the patient, this is not a good journey, even though you may have provided the core essential aspect in the cardiology department. So flip the perspective around. When you talk about the entire continuum of care, for the patient, it's one care journey. Okay, one care journey. So most clinical departments work in silos, and patients do not segregate the hospital experience or the health experience by clinic departments. So that means there's a requirement for extra efforts to adhere to and retrieve the quadruple framework so they can actually assure patient safety and quality of care, because it's always the in between that matters. And for some healthcare settings, when no one is responsible for it, no one actually really takes a look at it. So that's very dangerous in a healthcare setting. Now, we must also understand that healthcare is very different from other industry like transport and finance. This is, again, a very big topic. And I always like to take lecture time to demystify this concept. But the most simply put is finance, transport, logistic, whatever you can come up with, there are man-made rules that's observed. In healthcare, there's a lot of stuff that is not observed because man didn't make man. Okay, a lot of times when we treat disease, we treat symptoms, we don't even know the root cause. Therefore, it's very difficult to actually prescribe a standard set of rules in healthcare. This is why digital transformation in healthcare is extremely difficult. And I'm not the only one who says this. Our current Minister of Health, Mr. Ong, Mr. Ong, has also mentioned this last year, October 18, in one of the national papers, saying that digital disruption in healthcare is unlikely to happen because healthcare is complex. Okay, so I've extracted certain parts of the article, but basically, some of the common elements you find would be policy, regulatory, public confidence, that needs to be addressed. This is very different from banking industry, from logistic, finance, etc. Something important to take note, because in your quest to adopt to undergo the digital transformation journey, you may hire consultants who are done marvelous job in finance, transport, etc. And they will come and tell you stuff that makes sense. And some of you may have experienced this as well. When you try to implement it, it somehow doesn't really gel, because whatever work in the rest of the industry doesn't really work in healthcare. This is this unique challenge. Okay, so how do we go around optimizing the entire continuum of care? This is where we need to talk about health system science. Health system science is a foundation platform and framework for the study and understanding of how healthcare is delivered, how healthcare professionals work together to deliver that care. We also look at, under health system science, how health system improve patient care and patient care delivery. In other words, health system science helps an organization achieve the quadruple aim. So over at the Smart Health Literature Center in National University of Singapore Institute of Systems Science, we look at health system science on a daily basis. And I would like to really cover a quick condensed version to help you understand how to optimize your continuum of care in your healthcare setting. So this is the part where I really need to expound uh, to make sure that concepts are clear. When you talk about health system science, there's this concept called microsystem, clinical microsystems. So what is this? There's three components. There's a microsystem, there's a mesosystem, and there's a macrosystem. Now, a clinical microsystem is the smallest replicable clinical units that provide care to the patient. The macrosystem is the grand scheme of things, where you have multiple microsystems coming together. They form the macrosystem. The mesosystem in the middle is the glue that ties every microsystems together. So this is the health system: micro, meso, macro. So let me expound. Clinical microsystems, as mentioned, they are the individual units. They form the essential building blocks of larger organizations and ultimately the health system itself. There's almost always a clinical purpose that defines the essential part of this microsystem. Now, central to this microsystem would be the patient. And that makes sense because we're moving towards a patient-centered care approach. So the microsystem is the frontline unit that provides care to people, where patients, family, and care teams meet. So if you refer back to the patient-centered care model, you see the elements all coming together, putting theory into context. This will include your support staff, your processes, your technology at the front line. So if you look at the diagram, there's three individual microsystems. Your preoperative unit or department is a microsystem. Your operating room is a microsystem. Your intensive care unit is a microsystem. And if you want to optimize your microsystem level, you really need to focus on the workflow aspects of things. At this point in time, you may say, Adam, what is workflow then? So I will draw you back to some of the concepts I have alluded earlier on. If you look at the digitization, digitalization, and digital transformation aspects, the digitization is covering holistically the workflow aspects of things, where you actually use technology and you modify the way you deliver care, and of course, finding value producing opportunities. This is the workflow aspects of things, is human centered workflow aspects of things. So if you really want to improve your microsystem, work on your workflow. Okay. Now, the next level will be the Mesosystem, the glue that holds all the microsystems together, right? And reflects the journey of the patient across the health system, be it within an acute hospital or you go across the continuum of care. There's always a patient journey depending on what is the need. So the Mesosystem holds everything together. So what you do is you align one microsystem with another, and then when it's well aligned, your processes and workflow, um, then you actually get a very good microsystem. This is within, between, and across microsystem, the transitions and handoff. So case in point, if you have a patient being discharged from an acute hospital and they're going to a palliative care, you actually have to make sure that all the records are transferred, the medication records, for example, your instructions, and it's a seamless journey for the patient in terms of administrative aspects and clinical aspects. Because again, to the patient, it's one care journey. Patients don't really care if it's two separate organizations under the same cluster. To them, it's the same provider. Okay. So improving microsystem, a mesosystem, really is what we want to do when we talk about continuum of care, patient-centered care model, etc. So I'll bring you back to the patient-centered care model that we talked about a little bit earlier on. So you want to optimize Mesosystem, the glue that ties individual microsystems together, work on the patient-centered care. And you notice early on, if you've paid attention, you notice there's two boxes that I did not cover. It is the continuity and transition, as well as the coordination of care. So this is where you have to pay attention to ensuring that it's a seamless journey for the patient, from the mental perspective, from the physical perspective, the social perspective, etc., as well as for their families and friends. Again, digital serve as a crucial enabler. So the last part would be the macrosystem. So macrosystems is really the collection of microsystems coming together, working in tandem, having the mesosystems in place to tie everything together to make sure they're working fine. Now, this might sound simple, but in many times when you go into the large healthcare organization, because it's large, it's very difficult to actually coordinate between departments, some of the policies, workflow. There will be differences because they all branch off in different directions, all optimizing their services in the context of that clinical department. And you find it a lot of instances when you put two departments together, the policy doesn't really gel. Sometimes it's not clinically a problem, but there's a lot of workarounds to make sure that you have to actually make things work together in tandem. This includes your technology, policies, people because there's workflow in place. So in a well-optimized macro system, you have all your individual microsystems working well. They are fully optimized from the workflow perspective. They work together well because your patient-centered care model is implemented and supported by technology. And when they come together, you will form a good uh, macro system. So this is how you optimize the macro system. Make sure you optimize your individual microsystem. Make sure that they work in tandem on the mesosystem. Now, as I've explained, the entire lecture today is really a condensed version. It really covers the core essentials and the overall direction you need to go in optimizing your continuum of care, or if you want to implement digital transformation in an integrated care setting. If you're interested in finding out more, I welcome all of you to explore some of the courses offered by the Smart Health Leadership Center. We have different courses for different needs: tech professionals, healthcare professionals, all related to healthcare. So case in point, I'd like to draw your attention to the Professional Certificate in Health Innovation. You see there's 3 boxes there where you will cover the human-centered aspects of things in the service design module, the processes aspects of things in the business process reengineering module, and then data. And we run it off with a capstone project with real-life aspects of things to help you optimize your health organization's digital transformation journey. With that, I end my presentation, and I welcome any questions that may be posted from the floor. Thank you. Also, have the first question would be: can you explain again the difference between process and workflow? One is function centered. One is human centered aspects of things. They could be the same item, but there's different aspects or different lenses when you're looking at the problem. So, case in point, if a patient is trying to navigate his or her way across the health system, maybe they have just done an imaging procedure, and now they actually have to go to the pharmacy to collect their medication. There's actually 2 aspects you can optimize. You can make sure that everything is working fine from an operational perspective. Okay, your system is well oiled to transfer information well. Billing is done automatically, etc. Non-human centered. But but you fail to optimize the clinical workflow process of things. So you do not take into consideration the patient's mental state, the relevant aspects of mental, physical care that they need. Maybe they need some walking aids, need some porter services, etc. Of course, this is just a very high level example. So if you notice that it's the same your use case, but there's 2 aspects of things. So when a lot of times when we talk about digital transformation, the tech folks, the IT folks, the technology folks, they'll optimize things from the technical perspective, the operational stuff, but they really don't focus on the human aspects of things, which is what the clinical professionals want. For health professionals, we expect things to work from a technical perspective. What we really want to look at is during this journey. Yes, your billing is well done. You have your medication automatically packed, etc. All great and good. How is the patient feeling at this point in time? And are the services provided? Is it designed in a friendly manner? Are there, designs in pathways that actually guides the patient to the pharmacy department, etc., etc. So there's the difference between processes and workflow. The next question I have is: do you have any example how do care service providers reduce costs through digital transformation? This is a very good question. I usually cover this in some of my lectures. One of the biggest misconception people have is that digital transformation reduce costs. That's a myth. Digital transformation will not reduce your costs. It will only prevent you from um, investing unnecessary amount of resources uh, without digital transformation. So instead of exponential costs, digital transformation help you reduce it to linear incremental. So it doesn't actually reduce costs, it reduces your expenditure, if you will. Yeah, so that's a different concept. Um, oh, there's another question that says, that asks me, which country in the world is most advanced in their digital transformation journey in healthcare? And please share what they're doing and where they are in their journey. I think all countries, there are many, many countries that do it well. But as opposed to looking at it from a country level, the macro level, we should look at hospitals in general, or healthcare systems in general. So let's say in Singapore, we actually do pretty well. There's no perfect system, something we have to accept. Korea does it pretty well as well. Some parts of China actually does it pretty well, etc., etc. And yeah, I would love to share more examples, but I don't think I have enough time. I've just been flagged the 5 minutes left sign. But for the person who actually posed this question, feel free to contact me on a separate basis. You can add me on LinkedIn or just find my email online. I'll be more than happy to share uh, whatever I have. Do I still have enough time? Yes. Yeah. One more. Yeah, I have enough time for one more question. Can you share what are the top three challenges in digitization of Singapore healthcare system? There's a lot. I think the most challenging aspects I've come across is people. Because when I work with stakeholders, sometimes they have this pre-formed conception of what digital transformation is, and then they will try to. And this is human nature. Okay, this is perfectly fine. I accept it as part of change management. Um, and they will insist on certain things being done their way. So preconceived notion. Second is sometimes, and I have this problem myself. Healthcare professionals were trained in a certain manner. We always think that the way we receive our training on the aspects of care is the best. So if you come across stakeholders who are trained in acute care profession, they will look at things. They tend to look at things from a reactive manner. So things must happen. Intervention happens, right? So patients get sick. Digital intervention comes in. I'm trained in public health. I always like to look at things from a preventive perspective. I don't even want to wait for patients to get sick. I introduce digital intervention. And this sometimes can be a challenge because I will be the consultant coming in, trying to provide best practices, use cases. And this is where opinions differ. But there's no right or wrong. It's just what is relevant in context. The third one that I have, the most common challenge I have is clinical folks and technical folks not understanding each other. So I have to navigate both sides of the bridge. Actually, there's also the financial side. Um, so one of the things that we do over at Smart Health Leadership Center is that we try to bridge the divide uh, between the two, so they understand both perspective. Everyone is trying to solve the same problem. It's just that all of us are looking at things in a different manner. Again, not necessarily right or wrong, but we need all stakeholders to come together to actually deliver patient-centered care in a hospital setting, in a healthcare setting. With that, I understand I've run out of time. I thank you all of you so much for coming to this session and asking so much of these wonderful questions. I have a lot of these. Uh, and as mentioned, if you guys like to continue the conversation, feel free to contact me. I'll be more than happy to continue the conversation. Thank you so much.